The Chaldean astronomers who were under the training of Daniel and under his rulership for over 60 years of Daniel's life. So it was that Daniel and his companions were not only brilliant men, not only schooled in all of the wisdom of Israel, but now Daniel receives revelation from God, and he is able to interpret Nebuchadnezzar's dream that God gives to Nebuchadnezzar. Why does God give it to Nebuchadnezzar and now Daniel interprets it? Because Daniel, when he interprets it, he is made the president of Babylon immediately under Nebuchadnezzar. He is made a very, very wealthy young man, and he has the authority right underneath Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. And he is put in charge of all the Chaldean astronomers. Many of the Chaldean astronomers were young Jewish men that were raised in this knowledge, and they stayed behind in Babylon for hundreds of years. In fact, when they came back from the Babylonian captivity, there were hundreds of thousands of Jews that had not returned to Israel. Many of them were astronomers in the land of Babylon. Now we see that Daniel was the president of Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar, then under Belshazzar, and then under Darius the Mede. Each time he was made extremely wealthy. And we see that throughout his life he is given revelation. He knows when the Messiah is going to be born, and there are also things that he is told to seal up and to not write because they are not for the general dissemination to the public. But Daniel, before he died, Daniel being a eunuch, extremely wealthy, at the end of his life, now gives his instructions to the Chaldean astronomers. Daniel, who has no offspring to whom he would pass down his treasure, now puts it in the hands of those Jewish Chaldean astronomers and said, when you see this sign in the heavens, I want you to take my treasure and lay it at the feet of my Lord. For 500 years, those Chaldean astronomers watched the heavens. And when they saw that sign, well, the announcement of the birth of the righteous king, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, they took Daniel's treasure and they moved in a caravan, and from Babylon, it took them months to get all the way to Jerusalem. And when they got there, they came to the capital of the land, and they went in and said, we have come to worship he who was born King of the Jews. Herod was shaken by this. He called them in privately and inquired about what they had seen and what the time frame was. And when he had done that, he then called the scribes there in Jerusalem, the Torah teachers, and said, where will the Messiah be born? And they said, he'll be born in Bethlehem, the house of bread, just on the next hillside, away from Jerusalem. If you're on the Temple Mount, you look up at the next hillside to the south, there's Bethlehem. And then Herod sent them to Bethlehem. And he said, when you find the child, tell me, and so that I can go worship him as well. When they got out to Bethlehem, then the Chaldean astronomers were warned of the Lord in a vision. And the angel said, depart a different way, that Herod will attempt to kill the child. And so they left in another direction. But they laid at the feet of the Messiah Daniel's treasure that night. Now, in that night, that is when Joseph was warned by an angel and said that Herod was going to attempt to kill the child and that he was to flee into Egypt. Now, we know that months earlier, on the 40th day, when it came the time when they were to go to the temple and redeem the child and present an offering before the Lord, the Torah says that you are to present and offer a male lamb of the first year. And that was the price of the redemption of the firstborn male child. But they didn't do that. They offered 2 pigeons. Why? Because the Torah says if you can't afford a lamb, which are very plentiful, but if you can't afford it, you can bring 2 young pigeons. Miriam and Joseph couldn't afford even a lamb to redeem the Son of God as an offering for the awesome blessing that they have of raising the Son of God in their care. They can't afford it. But the very night that the angel tells them that they need to flee into Egypt, a treasure arrived that had taken 500 years to get there. The very night that they needed to flee, they had a treasure that they could then, at that very moment, pick up. They could move into Egypt. They could stay there. Now they could come back into their own land. They could then set up housekeeping up in Nazareth because God's provision had been there, but it took 500 years to get there. That is how our God works. At the last minute, He comes through with the deliverance. And if we are doing what He is asking us to do, and if we are in His will, then we don't have to worry about the provision. Because if it has taken 500 years to set it aside, it will have been done 500 years ago so that you will have what you need for this time. This is how our God works, and this is how we are to walk in this time. In everything, give thanks, because God's provision is there each step of the way.
Michael Rood will return with some closing thoughts in just a moment.
This teaching on the treasure of the Chaldean astronomers is based on an understanding of the history of the Babylonian captivity, which is scattered through several books of the Older Testament as well as other historical sources. You can search for an entire lifetime and never find a verse that says Daniel set aside the treasure for the Messiah. But after 30 years of searching the scriptures, the pieces of the puzzle finally fit together, forming a picture that is in harmony with all of the extant evidence. I hope that this inspires your confidence in our Creator, who continues to reach through time to direct the destiny of individuals who are called by Him and who respond with, "Here am I, send me." We invite you to join us again next time for Episode 6 in the 26-part series on the Prophecies and the Feast of the Lord. We are living in God's universe. This is Michael Rood from Jerusalem, bidding you shalom, peace. And I'll see you when the smoke clears.